Welcome to today's Crosspoint Devotion. We are now into 2025. If you saw our previous devotion, it was about the word expectancy. We began to examine kind of the life of Simeon and how he waited on God to fulfill what he had revealed to Simeon would happen. But there's another lady that comes along in Luke chapter 2. She's just as significant as Simeon, but she kind of teaches us a different word that we might need to take with us into this new year. And the word that I would give for her life, and that kind of represents who she was, is the word faithful. Her name is Anna. She's found in Luke chapter 2. Let me read her story for you. It begins in verse 36. There was also a prophetess, Anna, a daughter of Phanuel of the tribe of Asher. She was well along in years, having lived with her husband 7 years after her marriage, and was a widow for 84 years. She did not leave the temple, serving God night and day with fasting and prayers. At that very moment, she came up and began to thank God and to speak about Him to all who were looking forward to the redemption of Jerusalem. Now, I didn't do a very good job in the previous devotion of letting you know what God did with Simeon, but here's the short version. Simeon had waited all those years in expectancy for God to send the Messiah, and then Mary and Joseph came into the temple with little baby Jesus. And Simeon got to see the fulfillment of what God had put on his heart when he held baby Jesus. Well, there was another woman who was close by in the same temple area, and her name was Anna. Now, we know she's pretty old because she was married to her husband for about 7 years. Even if we just take it at face value that she got married at 13, she was married until she was 20, her husband died, and then it says that she was a widow for 84 years. If we add that, she's 104. This is just me using a little mathematics of my own. But let's say she's over 100 years old, and it says that she's been in the temple complex waiting for the same Messiah that Simeon had been expecting. And it says about her that she did not leave the temple, serving God night and day with fasting and prayers. She didn't even go home. All of this time, she's just faithfully serving God because God's put it on her heart that she's going to live long enough to see the Messiah and put her eyes on Him. So that day when Mary and Joseph came into the temple, Simeon went over and spoke with them and held the Messiah. And Anna, being close by, realized that Simeon was telling the same thing that she had been longing to see herself, and that was the birth of the Messiah, and now she had lived long enough to see it. But while she waited, she was faithful. Man, faithfulness is so hard. It's easy on the good days when everything's going well and everything's falling into place, and it seems like God's blessings are just being poured out day after day. But in those stretches where God seems to be silent, it's hard to be faithful. It's hard to be faithful when God's blessings disappear and we go through challenges and difficulties, maybe even loss. It's hard to be faithful when relationships are not being fulfilled in their maximum capacity. It's hard sometimes when we go to a church and we're in a dry season and the preaching's not very good, at least to us. It's hard to be faithful sometimes. Here's a woman who for 84 years after the death of her husband waited and remained faithful because she knew God was trustworthy and He would do just what He said. In 2024, we've got to balance expectancy with faithfulness. We're going to go into the year expecting God to do great things, to make us more like Jesus, to use us to advance His kingdom in the name of Jesus. But there will be some days and weeks and maybe even months where everything doesn't go exactly like we think. And in those moments, we got to be faithful. God's always going to be faithful. The question is just on our side, will we be faithful? And I want to challenge you in 2025 to be faithful to God, even as you expectantly wait. And as you go through those seasons, remember Simeon and Anna. Because of their faithfulness and their expectancy, they saw Jesus. And what a joy it was to both of them. I hope you'll have a great 2025, and we hope each and every week you can come back and join us for the Crosspoint Devotion so that can be an encouragement to you in your spiritual journey with the Lord. Have a great start to the new year.